can hear me? Is there anyone home? Come on, now. I hear you breathing down. Well, I can ease your pain, get you on your feet again. Relax, I need some information first. Just the basic facts. Can you show me where it hurts? There is no pain, you are receding. A distant ship, smoke on the horizon. You are only coming through in waves. Your lips move, but I can't hear what you say. When I was a child, I had a fever. My hands felt just like two balloons. Now I've got that feeling once again. I can't explain, you will not understand. This is not how I am. I have become comfortably numb.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Doc's Boneyard. I'm Doc, and this week's episode is going to kind of get a little intense, I guess. I'm going to throw out the mantra real quick, and it's a safe zone but not a comfort zone. I'll be right back after these messages. Hey everybody, it's Doc from Doc's Boneyard. Hey listen, mental health is no joke and the struggle is real. I'm joining forces with Roman Rozelle, a veteran of U.S. Army Special Forces, to help promote mental health awareness. To quote Roman, I wrestle to save lives, including my own. Proceeds from this shirt go to benefit the Special Forces Association Chapter 38, who help many families in their invisible wound struggle. Now you can get yours today by going to collarandelbowbrand.com. That's collarandelbowbrand.com. Just type in the word Roman, R-O-M-A-N, in the search tab. I'm proud to support Roman, and I had this shirt, and I wear mine proudly. You can also find the link at the Boneyard 2021 on Facebook.
Alright, sports fans, I'm back. Had to pay some bills there for a second. Listen, I've done quite a few podcasts about different veteran type issues, and these aren't just veteran type issues. These are issues that really affect everyone. If you're living, breathing, shitting, stinking, well, you get the point. This one is going to try to explain why veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTS, have trouble expressing emotions. Now, I know you're thinking, oh shit, Doc is going to get all touchy-feely. Well, yeah. In this episode, yes, we are going to get not only touchy-feely, but we're going to dive into the difference between feelings and emotions, where they come from, how they're regulated, the different parts of the brain that control and influence these types of things. So not only is it going to get touchy-feely, well, it's going to get a little medical ease too, because I'm going to throw some big-ass Latin and Greek words out there that if you're not medically trained or haven't taken a medical technology course, probably won't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I'm going to break it down into layman's terms because I don't speak that shit anyway. I'd rather just tell you, look, it's a problem with the squash being fucked up and shit not being able to get from point A to point B. You know, stuff like that. So, I'm going to take another quick commercial break, and we're going to jump into it with both feet. And this is your last chance to grab that life preserver, because I got to tell you, I am going through this issue myself. And like 99% of the podcasts that I do, they all have a personal connotation to them in some respect or another. Some issue that I have dealt with in the past or I am currently dealing with. So yeah, this shit's going to get real, but just bear with me, because maybe it'll shed some light on not just who we are, but why we are who we are.
Hey Doc's Boneyard fans, did you know that you can now get officially licensed DBY merch like hoodies, tanks, long and short sleeve tees, phone and laptop cases, and so much more? Visit my merch store, the Boneyard 2021, at tpublic.com. That's tpublic, T-E-E public.com.
And the sound you hear in the background is me ruffling papers, because I took a shitload of notes on this stuff. Both feet in those swim trunks, huh? Alright, the Veterans Administration, for some unknown reason, has not put a lot of research into why we combat vets have a problem with our emotions. Now, yes, they have done studies and research on PTSD, but they really haven't done a lot on apathy. Why we can't feel what we used to. What are the barriers associated with that? Because if we recall a traumatic experience, all those emotions come back. The fear, the hate, the anger, the guilt, the despair, whatever. So we know that they're there. But there hasn't been a lot of of research done on the why. Just the fact that, yes, there is a problem there. Now, neuroscience is a factual science. It deals with structure and function of the brain. Psychology deals with the interpretations of feelings and emotions and behaviors. Now, you would think somewhere out there, somewhere, somebody who has a PhD would have that brilliant idea that, you know what? Why don't we do a study, all-encompassing study on all that shit? Not just the facts, just the fact that these individuals who suffer with post-traumatic stress or PTSD, whichever flavor of the month you want to call it, have these problems, but why do they have the problems? You know, it's great to identify a problem, but if you can't narrow down the root cause, then what the hell good is it? The problem is still going to be there. You just don't know how to fix it. So, yeah, this is what we're going to jump into. Now, believe it or not, there is a difference between emotions and feelings. And you're going to hear me flipping pages here in the background because I took a shitload of notes on this stuff. Let's see. What is the definition of a feeling? Well, feelings are mental associations and body sensations while in an emotional state. Okay, so what are emotions? Emotions are responses triggered with the interpretation of a specific event. These are often associated with the release of hormones, chemicals, neurotransmitters, that type of stuff. So, basically, emotions have a physical component, whereas feelings are more subjective, I guess, would be the best definition to say that. Feelings are what are observed from others. But when you deal with emotion, there's an actual biological response that happens. And we'll get into that, believe me. Now, in doing the research for this podcast, and this is probably going to be a long one, I came across two books that were recommended to me by a therapist that I'm currently seeing. That's right, yes, yours truly is currently in therapy, and I'm not fucking afraid to or ashamed to admit that. Yes, even Doc needs help too. I want to understand not just what I do, but why the fuck I do it. So maybe I could, modify or change that behavior so it's not a problem. But I'm getting off on a tangent. The two books that I've came across were actually recommended to me by the therapist was Unfuck Your Brain. Shit you not, folks. Unfuck Your Brain. Using Science to Get Over Anxiety, Depression, Anger, Freakouts, and Triggers. And it's by Faith G. Harper, who has a PhD. And there's also another little juicy morsel here that I've been pulling stuff out of. It says, Unfuck Yourself. Get out of your head and get into your life. And this is written by Gary John Bishop. And Unfuck Your Brain takes a look more at trauma than anything else. And the other one, Unfuck Yourself, is just basically, life situations, how we get stuck in our own head and can't get the fuck out of it, basically. So yeah, I am currently reading both of these books, and yes, I am pulling material out for this podcast. All right, depending on which school of thought you partake of in the pseudoscience of psychology, and yes, I know I'm going to piss some people off out there, but yes, psychology is a subjective science at best. It is an interpretation of why we do what we do. Depending on what school of thought you want to partake in, especially in the theory of evolution, or correction, theory of emotion, I've got a couple different examples here of different individuals who throughout time have done different types of research. René Descartes, Descartes, was a French philosopher in 1649 and suggested that an emotional states are broadly classified into passions. Now, he did not use the word emotions, he used the word passions. Old Charles Darwin in 1872 called emotions core expressions of core effect. And he listed anger, fear, disgust, sadness, surprise, and happiness. Well, in 1972, Paul Ekman, Ekman, came on and gave us his theory. And basically, emotions are described as polar opposites. And what he meant by that was joy, and the opposing contrast would be sadness. Trust, distrust, anger, fear, surprise, and of course the antithesis is anticipation. And he also came up with the concept of the wheel of emotions, which is basically a combination or blending of emotions. Say, let's use love as an example. Okay, love is an example of joy, trust, and happiness. Okay, there's 3 different types of emotions there associated with love. How about resentment and anguish could be attributed to hatred, jealousy, and anger. So, what are basic emotions? Well, according to the research that I have done, and I'm shuffling through my papers as I'm doing this, there are basically 6 different types of emotion. Depending, like I said, depending on what school of thought you want to prescribe to. There is happiness, there is sadness, there is fear, anger, distrust, and surprise. And basically, I've already given you the definition of an emotion. It's a strong feeling that is derived from one circumstance's mood or relationship. And emotions are subjective, which means they're observable and reflect our own internal states to psychological wellness. Woo! The fuck was that, Doc? Yeah. I'm going to repeat that. Emotions are a subjective and reflective internal state to psychological well-being. It gives others a picture from the outside as to what's going on the inside. Now, here's some characteristics of emotions that I found that was actually kind of interesting. Emotions are instinctual. We are hardwired with them. From the caveman on up, we have certain things within our psyche that protect us, and emotions are that. They are a set of physical symptoms and psychological experiences. How you experience emotions varies from person to person. Not everybody experiences anger in the same way. Not everybody experiences happiness in the same way. Those interpretations are as individual as we are, and we are many. Emotions also have physical reactions. Elevated blood pressure, heart rate, sweating, trembling, queasy stomach, whatever. You know how you feel. Emotions usually do not last more than 90 seconds. If it lasts longer, then it becomes a mood. Now, this I thought was really interesting because I had no friggin' idea. I thought once you felt it, that was it. I didn't realize that emotions are only supposed to be short-lived. I had no friggin' idea that they turn into a mood. So, I learned something new. Again, emotions are involuntary. They can also alter your thought and perceptions associated with an event, which also influences behavior. All right, moving on. Gave 6 examples of the 6 different emotions, like I said, depending on what school of thought you prescribe to. Charles Darwin came up with a list of 34 types of emotions. Also, the National Academy of Sciences and the University of California came up with 27 distinct categories. So, like I said, it's a subjective field. I mean, it's, whatever whatever you want to observe is how you're going to see through that lens. All right, moving on. Let's talk about emotional regulation. What? Yeah, the part of your brain that actually regulates your emotions. Now, if you look at the brain as a whole, there's different parts to your brain. There's different lobes, as they call them. There's the frontal lobe, which is behind the forehead. There's the parietal lobes, the temporal lobes, the occipital lobe. That's in the back, by the way. The parietal lobe. That's all, gobbledygook, medical gobbledygook. But all you need to really know is the front of the brain is called the frontal lobe. And basically, the frontal lobe is what controls emotional regulation, decision making, self-control, cognitive skills. Bet most people didn't know this. The concentration, alertness, high-level thinking, or problem-solving stuff, planning, judgment, and conversation are all dealt with, are all regulated by the frontal lobe of the brain. Now, this is assuming that everything is functioning normally, that there's no pathological reasons or no organic reasons for shit not to be working. So in a normal, healthy brain, normal, healthy, matured brain, I should say, this is what's supposed to happen. Now, adversely, if you have trauma to that part of the brain, you obviously have changes in personality, difficulty planning, difficulty, basically your walking, talking, thinking part of the brain is where you're going to have your deficits or your fucked ups, so to speak. All right, now we're going to get into some serious medicalese, so to speak. All right, we've looked at the brain from the front, from the person's forehead. That's where the frontal lobe is. I'm going to talk to you about what's called the limbic system, Limbic. And basically, that's the part of the brain just above the brainstem, smooshed down deep in the middle of the brain. The brain has two halves, or hemispheres, the right and left. Well, this stuff is kind of sandwiched up in the middle. And the brainstem is basically what it sits on top of. Now, there's different parts to the limbic system. There's the amygdala, the condylar gyrus, the pharynx, the hippocampus, hypothalamus, and there's two other parts here, the olfactory cortex and the thalamus. The last two, we're not really going to deal much with those because the olfactory basically deals with identifying odors, it's that whole nose thing. And the thalamus is basically, it's like a relay which signals information to and from the spinal cord into the other parts of the brain, the cerebrum. So we ain't going to go into that. It's important to know because it's part of the limbic system, but as it pertains to emotions, we're not going to worry about that. All right, so going back to the amygdala, that's basically, I guess you'd call it an almond-shaped structure. And what it basically does is it's involved in emotional responses, how we respond to different emotional situations. That's where that's regulated. It also secretes different types of hormones, and also has something to do with memory. Now, there have been studies that veterans have had done, MRIs and CAT scans, where they actually looked at the size of the amygdala in a veteran that has PTSD or PTS, and they have found that they can be slightly larger, up to 17% larger, give or take some. Now, unless you know what you had before, those findings are really irrelevant because you've got nothing to compare them to. For some odd reason, nobody at the Department of Defense or, nobody with these PhDs have thought, hey, look, why don't we take a select group of soldiers pre-combat, check the size of this fucker, and then when they get back, years later, let's do a follow-up study, and bing, let's take another picture and see the comparison. See how it's changed. Gee, maybe Doc here might come up with, some new and scientific approach that might get me the Peace Prize. I don't know. So basically, that's what the amygdala does. Now, associated with that is the cingulate gyrus, and basically that's a fold in the brain that involves sensory input concerning emotions. And it also regulates behavior. It also regulates aggressive behavior. Now, interweaving with all that is the pharynx. That's basically a band of nerve fibers that connects the hippocampus to the hypothalamus. And we're going to get to those two next. So that's basically a conduit where information passes to and from. Hippocampus. What in the hell is that? Well, basically, it's a tiny structure that acts as a memory travel guide. It sends memories to the appropriate part of the cerebral hemispheres for long-term storage, and it can also retrieve those memories when needed. And how about the hypothalamus? Now, this is an important emotional center that controls the molecules that make you feel happy, angry, exhilarated, agitated, that type of thing. So basically we have a series of structures that sits up on top of the brainstem, swooshed down in between the two hemispheres of the brain that control all this shit. Great. We know what they do. We know how they work. Okay, that's only half the problem. What about the emotional dysregulation? So if there's no obvious trauma or injury or any physiological deficit to that area, then what's the problem? We've already established the fact that we can feel because when we're going through cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what the VA loves to use to kind of desensitize you to specific tragic moments, to take the emotional impact out of it, not the memory away, but the emotional impact out of it, we know that we could experience those emotions in those situations. But what about everyday life? And this is something I struggle with because my wife says, well, you don't feel. The only emotion you have is anger. Well, that's not true. I do feel sadness. I do feel happiness. I feel a shitload of anger at times. Hell yeah. But is there a psychological block that's stopping me from either A, recognizing, and B, expressing those emotions? That's what I'm trying to figure out. This is what I am going through in my own personal life. This is a problem. For some reason, we get characterized as unfeeling. And it's not true, folks. We do feel. We feel everything that you feel. And I'm not just using combat as an example. Anybody who's suffered a traumatic psychological event or traumatic physical and or psychological event goes through some type of this. And it's an ongoing project of mine to figure out why. I mean, let's face it, folks. Unless you've been in that situation, you can tell people all day long what it's like and they're not going to get it. And it's bad enough that with the stigma attached to quote-unquote mental type disorders like post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic syndrome or whatever the hell you want to call it, there's the stigma attached that is cloaked in misunderstanding and misinformation, or not enough information, or not enough research. And folks, we had been dealing with this type of thing since we have been bipedal, since we've walked on 2 friggin' feet. This is not a new concept. This is not a new problem. This is a problem that has been around from day one, from our day one of our creation, for some reason or another. I don't have the answers. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a neuropsychologist. I'm just a regular, average dude who suffers with this shit and wants to know why. Well, I know why. I mean, I put myself in that position. But why it's affected me in the way that it has, and how can I turn that, don't want to say negative, but how can I turn that into better understanding, better education, and better productivity? Because let's face it, folks, it's not going away. It's not. It's a human condition. It is our condition, like it or not. It is a part of who we are. It's as organic to us as toenails on our toes and fingernails on our fingers. I mean, it's a part of who we are, but not who we are. And maybe through this podcast, it may break some of the stigma attached to it, the stigma of apathy, the act of not being able to express emotions or not feeling. And let's face it, one of the problems or one of the symptoms of PTSD is numbness. I don't know if that's a psychological defense mechanism that our brain says, okay, look, man, you've had enough shit going on, so we're just going to hit the pause button for a while, and, maybe when you get into a better place mentally, we'll hit the play button and we'll see what the fuck happens. If that's what it is, great. If that's part of our psychological fail-safe, if you want to put it, great. If we're hardwired that way, that's awesome. The brain and the mind are resilient. The brain has a power to regenerate itself to a certain extent. The mind is totally resilient. The mind comes up with all kinds of ingenious ways of protecting itself. Now, sometimes it doesn't let you know what the hell's going on. Sometimes you gotta, you figure it out accidentally, like, oh, fuck, where the hell did that come from? Oh, shit, it's my mind. Nightmares are a good example. Nightmares are based partially in truth. And when we sleep, it's our mind's way of trying to figure out what the fuck happened. How am I going to make sense of this? How am I going to process this? So it's not exactly a bad thing. It's just a misunderstood thing. And I've even reached out to the vet center for their advice when I started to do the research for this podcast. Because even the therapist I talked to didn't know that much about emotional dysregulation, and whatever studies are ongoing. I mean, which is kind of funny because you could go to the VA to put a Band-Aid on the problem, but unless you get to the root of the problem, hey, the problem still exists. So guys, I could really, really, really use your feedback on this. Please hit me up with an email, theboneyard2021@yahoo.com. That's theboneyard2021@yahoo.com. Tell me some of your experiences. We are all in this together. We are our best advocates. We are our best mental warfare fighters, so to speak. The experts don't have the answers. I believe we have the answers, and I believe that they're locked up in us somewhere. Could one of the possible keys to closing those locked doors be, say, hypnotherapy maybe? Who knows? Do you think it could be a problem with fear, that maybe we're afraid of these emotions? and we just self-sabotage ourselves to, not even go there because we don't know what the fuck is going to happen. Hey, I am open up to any possible explanation. I don't have a clue. Or if I do, I don't know why I don't have a clue. I don't know what I don't know. And I want to find those answers, not just for myself, but for others out there who have the same problem. And I shouldn't say problem. I don't even like to use the word issue. How about unique characteristic? How about that? Take some of the negative connotation off of it. Be back in just a few.
Hey everybody, it's Doc from Doc's Boneyard. Hey listen, if you're in the Fayetteville, North Carolina, especially around Fort Bragg, and you're looking for that hard to find military badassery gear, why don't you go see my buddy George at Silverback Military Surplus. He's located just outside the Yadkin Gate, 6477C Yadkin Road. He has a wide variety of patches, hats, tactical gear, you name it. Tell him Doc sent you.
During the break, I was kind of looking over my notes here, and I'm not sure that when I identified the 6 acceptable, I guess, types of emotions, didn't really get a chance to give a explanation of what they are. So I'm going to throw that out real quick. Happiness. We'll take happiness first. And last but not least on the menu here is surprise. And that's basically, your basic startle response of needs being met. About sadness. Sadness is explained as a statement of grief, disappointment, lack of hope, loneliness. And it's interesting to note here that prolonged sadness actually leads to depression. And I did a big podcast on depression a while ago. So if you want to know the signs and symptoms of depression, please check that out. How about fear? They really didn't go into an explanation of the word fear, only to say that it is a fight or flight response to the unknown. Anger. Characterized by hostility, agitation, frustration, rage, irritability. About disgust, avoidance, or aversion. And last but not least on the menu here is surprise, and that's basically a startle response to the unknown or the unexpected. So I guess if there's an important takeaway to all this, is, basically emotions are tied to the brain and memory. Emotions allow us to call a specific memory or event. And, what's ironic is, like I said, if you're in the cognitive, I made a mistake, I want to correct that, cognitive processing therapy, where you relive the trauma over and over. CPT, not CBT. And, again, if we could recall horrific combat trauma or even, horrific trauma, then why can't we express those same emotions in everyday living? Kind of leaves you scratching your head, doesn't it? I know it does me. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out me. Now, I like to think I've got a pretty firm grasp, for the most part, on who I am, what makes me who I am, why I do what I do, what motivates me, that type of stuff. But this is a lingering question that, hopefully someday that, we'll find out an answer for it. Or like I said, maybe I have the answer already and just don't know how to open that door. I would go to a witch doctor, hell, if I thought that would help. I know the VA's not very big on hypnotherapy, and there's a lot of skepticism that goes along with that. I'm even willing to try that, to open some of those locked doors. And to be honest with you folks, I have a block of time in my past that I would just love to have access to from my childhood, to see, if I was predisposed psychologically to trauma because of the events that happened during that time period that I can't account for. Hey, if that would make a nice flashing neon sign that says, you know what, Joe, you just connected the dots, fucking A, man, that would be awesome. That would friggin' be great. And like I said, I'm willing to try mostly, anything reasonable. I don't know if I'm going to do psychotropic drugs or anything like that, start popping tabs of LSD and shit and go off on it. No, because God only knows what would happen. I don't think society as a whole would recover from that adventure. But as always, I would like to thank you for tuning into my podcast and listening to me ramble incessantly. And yes, I know I use that phrase every podcast, but you know what? It's cool. I like it, and it's my podcast, so I get to do it. I'm the boss. And again, please, 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 if you have any suggestions, comments, concerns, questions, fan mail even, hell, shoot me a line at theboneyard2021 at yahoo.com. That's theboneyard2021 at yahoo.com. Also, don't forget to check out my Facebook page, the Boneyard 2021 on Facebook. That has updates about the show, maybe when I'm going live again. I'm still farting around with the internet radio thing. When the program is up and running, man, I want to get back into the DBY radio thing. I've got pre-programmed playlists for your mental health musical relaxation or your mental health musical therapy. And there'll probably be a shameless plug and shout out here toward the end of the podcast for that too. But again, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to listen to my podcast. Remember, it's not the fat, the meat, the gristle. It's just the bare bones. See you next time, folks.
Looking for that unique, handcrafted, one-of-a-kind gift? Check out Dee's Unique Designs on Facebook. She specializes in custom artistry from paintings to jewelry, coasters to tumblers, and everything in between. That's Dee's Unique Designs on Facebook. Give her your ideas and watch them come to life. Hey Doc's Boneyard fans, did you know that you can now get officially licensed DBY merch like hoodies, tanks, long and short sleeve tees, phone and laptop cases, and so much more? Visit my merch store, the Boneyard 2021, at teepublic.com. That's teepublic, T-E-E public.com. Doc's Boneyard is going live and taking over the internet radio. That's right. DBY Radio, hosted by yours truly, will be cranking out some of my favorite bang your head musical Thorazine. Tune in at citrus3.com and look for Doc's Boneyard Radio. Or follow the Boneyard 2021 on Facebook page for live broadcast times, dates, and station links. I'm gonna shatter the DBY safe zone.